After a long day filled with numbers and deadlines, I pulled into the driveway carrying bags of groceries. My back ached and my head was heavy, but the moment I stepped through the door, my daughter ran to me with arms wide open. Her little hug cut through the fatigue and reminded me why this house always felt like my safe place. The smell of food waiting to be cooked, her laughter, and the quiet order of our evening routine gave me a sense of control I desperately needed after work. That night was supposed to be like any other. I set the groceries down, ready to start dinner, when the doorbell rang. Standing there was my husband's sister with her daughter, each holding luggage and bags spilling with clothes. They walked in with the kind of confidence that felt less like a visit and more like a takeover. My husband appeared behind them, carrying another bag, saying they would be staying with us. He had not asked me. He had not even warned me. The moment their bags touched the floor, I felt the air in the room change. My home, once a place where I could breathe, was suddenly crowded with voices and demands that were never mine to invite. In that instant, I realized how quickly a safe haven can be stripped away when respect is not given. What should have been a warm Tuesday night turned into the beginning of a battle for space, dignity, and control. Amber and her daughter did not slip quietly into our home. Within the first night, the guest room that I had decorated with care was no longer mine to offer. Clothes spilled out of half-zipped bags, perfume bottles covered the dresser, and my daughter's toys were shoved into a corner as if her space no longer mattered. What was supposed to be a temporary favor started to look like a permanent claim. The next morning, the living room bore signs of their presence as if they had lived there for years. Shoes kicked off in the middle of the floor, a blanket draped across the couch, and a tablet charger tangled among my daughter's coloring books. I watched as her cousin picked up markers and scribbled across pages she had carefully filled in, the kind of small destruction that cuts deeper than it seems. Each detail chipped away at the sense of order I fought to maintain. It was not just the clutter that unsettled me. It was the way Amber lounged with her feet on the coffee table like it belonged to her, or the way she helped herself to our kitchen without a word. My daughter looked at me for permission, but there was nothing left for me to give. The quiet authority of being the one who set the rules in my own home had been replaced with a dull ache of being ignored. What once felt like my sanctuary now felt like borrowed space, and the loss of respect was louder than the noise of the house itself. Owen defended his sister at every turn, as if her comfort outweighed the needs of the family he had built. When I questioned him about the noise, the mess, or the constant intrusion, he brushed it aside with the same excuse that she needed time. My concerns were treated as nagging, while Amber's demands were treated as urgent. The imbalance was not only unfair, it was a betrayal of the bond that was supposed to protect us as a unit. The one who felt it most was our daughter. She asked why her father no longer tucked her in, why he laughed louder at her cousin's stories than at her own. Children may not understand money, but they understand absence, and she could feel his slipping away. Watching her eyes dim each night was worse than any argument I had with him. His loyalty seemed to have been transferred to someone else's child while his own sat waiting. What made it even harder was the unspoken weight of money pressing against us. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the average American household already spends over $5,000 a month on basic living. Now we were feeding and housing 2 more people who gave nothing back. Each extra bill was a reminder that irresponsibility with finances mirrors irresponsibility with loyalty. A man who cannot protect his home from waste cannot protect it from disrespect either, and my husband was failing on both fronts. The breaking point came on a quiet evening when I walked in and found Owen scrolling through pictures of new homes. His eyes lit up as he explained his vision of building a place large enough for all of us, a fresh start where his sister and her daughter would live under the same roof with our family forever. He spoke about open kitchens, big bedrooms, and a playroom for the girls as if he were offering a gift. To me, it felt like a sentence. What he called a dream looked like the walls of a prison closing in. A house is supposed to represent safety and permanence. In his words, it became the opposite. Every brick he described sounded like another boundary taken from me, another layer of respect stripped away. I stood in the kitchen, listening as if my silence would somehow make it less real, but the truth was clear. He had not only given my home away, but he had also offered my future without asking. I knew then that no negotiation or compromise could protect me or my daughter. The man who should have been my partner had already chosen where his loyalty lay. Calmly, I opened a drawer and placed an envelope on the counter. He looked down at it, confused, waiting for an explanation. I met his eyes with steady resolve and told him this was the only plan I was willing to build. Inside were divorce papers, not a threat, but a decision. It was not anger that moved me. It was the certainty that protecting my child and reclaiming my dignity mattered more than preserving a marriage that no longer existed in spirit. In that moment, I felt the kind of strength that comes not from shouting, but from finally saying no. At the lawyer's office, I expected Owen to sit beside me with quiet resentment, but instead he walked in with Amber at his side. She took the chair next to him as if she belonged there, crossing her legs and leaning forward when the discussion turned to assets. She nodded at the mention of savings and retirement accounts, then whispered into his ear like a partner at a business deal. When the lawyer outlined our joint funds, I could see her calculating what they imagined would build their new life together. Her confidence grew until she spoke out loud, saying the money should be enough to start the house they had planned. The arrogance would have been laughable if it were not so insulting. I let her finish, then calmly asked where she thought the house would stand. She looked surprised, then replied that, of course, it would be on the land my father had offered us. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I told them the truth with a steady voice. The land was not Owen's to give, nor Amber's to claim. It belonged to my father, and the offer was conditional on my marriage. Under American divorce law, property gifted by parents remains separate property unless explicitly shared. That land was mine, and with the marriage ending, so did his access to it. The lawyer confirmed what I already knew, and I watched Amber's face fall as reality set in. It was more than a financial win. It was the restoration of dignity. Knowledge had protected me where blind trust could not. Boundaries had drawn a line that manipulation could not cross. In that moment, justice did not shout. It simply stood firm, and the silence that followed carried more weight than any argument. After the divorce, Owen discovered the cost of his choices in the most practical way. He was now legally bound to pay child support every month, while also supporting his sister and her daughter under his own roof. What he once brushed off as temporary help became a daily drain. The numbers were not forgiving. According to recent data, the average cost of living for a single adult in the United States exceeds $3,200 a month, and that is before adding the needs of two dependents who contributed nothing. His paycheck was stretched thin, and no matter how many corners he tried to cut, the math never worked. Amber's presence only deepened the strain. She had no job, no plan, and no urgency to find either. Instead of contributing, she borrowed from neighbors, asked for small loans, and leaned on Owen as if his wallet had no bottom. Groceries, gas, and school supplies piled up until sacrifices became visible. Vacations were canceled. Dance classes for the girls ended. Even the internet was downgraded to the cheapest plan. The home that was supposed to feel bigger with two families inside now felt suffocating under the weight of unpaid bills and silent resentment. The cracks were not only financial. Owen had once prided himself on being a provider, but that pride eroded as quickly as his savings. The more he tried to hold everything together, the more it slipped from his hands. The dignity he thought he was preserving by siding with his sister turned to humiliation when he realized she had no intention of standing on her own. She drained not just his income, but his energy, his patience, and whatever loyalty he had left to give. For me, hearing about their collapse was not a triumph. It was a lesson written in plain numbers. Abandoning discipline and loyalty does not bring freedom. It leads to ruin. A man who betrays his family for convenience will end up shackled by the very people he chose to defend. The justice in that truth required no courtroom. It revealed itself in overdue bills, restless nights, and the silence of a daughter who no longer looked to him for love. Life after leaving did not begin with grand changes. It began with small breaths of relief that slowly grew into something steady. At my parents' house, my daughter found safety in a warm bed and familiar walls, and I found strength in the quiet support of people who asked for nothing in return. Nights once filled with tension were now calm, and mornings felt like a beginning rather than a battle. I returned to freelance accounting, working from the kitchen table while my parents helped with childcare. It was not glamorous, but it was enough to cover what we needed and build a sense of stability. Each bill paid on time became a quiet victory, a reminder that I was capable of steering my own life. My daughter's laughter filled the rooms again as she baked muffins with her grandmother, sold lemonade with her grandfather, and played without the shadow of constant criticism. Her smile was proof that peace had value beyond numbers. One evening, I opened an old email folder labeled House Plans. It was full of pictures Owen had once sent me, images of kitchens and wide living rooms that had felt like promises. Now they looked like blueprints for a cage I had narrowly escaped. I deleted the folder with a calm certainty, not out of anger but out of freedom. Releasing those plans was more than clearing space on a computer. It was claiming space in my life. True victory was not in watching someone else fall. It was in standing again, unshaken, with dignity intact, and a future that belonged to me and my child. 1 year later, I walked with my daughter across the land my father had once promised us. The soil was rich and dark, lined with trees that swayed in the wind, and the air felt like a clean page waiting to be written. She ran ahead in her rain boots and pointed to a sturdy branch where she wanted to swing, her voice carrying the kind of hope that only children have. I stood still and let the moment settle. This land could hold walls and windows one day, but I knew a home is not created by bricks alone. A true home rests on loyalty, respect, and the dignity of the people who live inside it. Without those foundations, no structure can stand. The lesson was carved deeper than any blueprint could show. I smiled and told her that when the time came, the house we built here would belong only to those who honored it. It was not about size or design. It was about who deserved to stay. As you listen to this story, think about the times you faced the choice between compromise and dignity. The house you live in, whether large or small, will only stand firm if its walls are built with integrity.